Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are acting as your personal exam turnaround coaches, diving deep into something that literally makes or breaks your Cambridge AS-level Afrikaans exam, and that is mastering complex essays. This isn't just some niche topic, it pops up in every single examination series. So whether you're just trying to secure a solid passing grade or you're aggressively gunning for those top-tier marks, understanding the precise mechanics of how Cambridge examiners actually evaluate your writing is absolutely essential. We are just doing a basic grammar review today. No, we're going to completely deconstruct the architecture of a perfect, high-scoring response.
Before we even get into the weeds, you absolutely have to see this quote. This is pulled directly from the Principal Examiner reports. The classic mistake is providing generic answers not specific to the question context. Listen, you've got to treat this as the ultimate warning sign. Examiners are reading thousands of papers, right? They can spot a pre-memorized generic essay from a mile away. You could have the most complex, beautiful Afrikaans vocabulary in the world, but it absolutely won't save you if you fall into this generic trap.
So what's the real issue here? Why do students find multi-stage analysis, which basically just means building a layered argument step by step, so incredibly hard? What's the disconnect between knowing your advanced Afrikaans vocabulary and actually getting the credit for it on the paper? Well, it turns out, very often students totally understand the language, but they completely understand the exam itself. They end up leaving massive amounts of method marks on the table simply because they aren't showcasing their analytical process on the actual page.
Here is our game plan for today's explainer. We'll be hitting the core objectives, the procedural framework, essential method marks, critical analytical skills, and finally, those crucial examiner warnings.
Okay, Section 1, Core Objectives. Let's decode what the examiners are actually looking for in this assessment framework.
Look at how this is structured. It's fascinating because it breaks down the assessment objectives into 3 distinct cognitive domains, and successful candidates absolutely must hit all 3. Remember, this isn't just a language test, it's a thinking test. At the absolute baseline, you have knowledge and understanding, which requires mastery of the fundamentals, right? That's your basic grammar, your vocabulary. But to pass well, you have to step up to analysis, demanding systematic processing and solid evidence-based reasoning. And then there is the absolute top tier, evaluation. This is where you are making justified decisions and actively questioning the assumptions presented to you. To get the A-star equivalent, you literally have to operate across all 3 levels.
This brings us to a massive realization: superficial breadth versus analytical depth. The Cambridge framework strictly prioritizes analytical depth. It is definitely not about how much you write. Believe me, examiners do not want a 10-page essay stuffed with surface-level observations. They want depth. It's all about how thoughtfully you can analyze a highly specific prompt, using targeted, complex sentence patterns to express really nuanced ideas.
So what do top-tier students actually do? They exhibit a connected, conceptual understanding that they can transfer to completely unfamiliar contexts. You can't just be memorizing phrases. You need to build a flexible linguistic toolkit. Because when the exam throws a totally bizarre or unfamiliar scenario your way, it's that conceptual understanding that lets you adapt those complex sentences to fit the new context perfectly.
Moving into Section 2, Procedural Framework. Let's look at the step-by-step methodology you need to deploy.
When you're tackling these essay questions, you absolutely must follow a standardized sequence. We recommend these 5 steps. First, deconstruct the question. What exactly are they asking? Second, extract relevant data, pull quotes and evidence from the stimulus material. Third, select your analytical framework and execute it. Fourth, verify your results. Basically ask yourself, does my written argument actually make logical sense? And fifth, present it. Sticking to this sequence ensures you're building a structured, evidence-backed argument rather than just panicking and word vomiting onto the page.
Now, Step 5 is ruthless. Your presentation has to follow strict conventions to show professional skills and lock in full marks. We're talking proper headings, correct terminology, appropriate formats, and clear annotation. Look, you could write the most brilliant, grammatically complex Afrikaans sentences ever conceived, but if your essay is formatted like a casual text message, the examiner is going to penalize you hard. Presentation totally matters here.
Which leads us perfectly into Section 3, Essential Method Marks. This is all about rewarding your process. Which leads us perfectly into Section 3, Essential Method Marks.
Let's define the method mark strategy. It's a systematic approach where you get marks for demonstrating clear working in a logical analytical process, not just for the final essay itself. Think of it like a math test. You have to show you're working. Examiners actively want to reward your thought process. Your complex sentences shouldn't just state a bunch of isolated facts. They need to logically connect your thoughts to show exactly how you got to your conclusion. Please, whatever you do, don't leave these marks hidden inside your head. Put them on the paper.
So, how do you actually grab those method marks on exam day? 3 steps. First, identify the given info. Second, break your argument into logical steps. And third, solve it systematically with clear working. By using complex conjunctions and transitional vocabulary in Afrikaans, you are essentially drawing a map of your reasoning on the page. You're making it literally impossible for the examiner to miss your logical flow.
All right, Section 4, Critical Analytical Skills and Evaluative Thinking.
What does evaluative thinking actually look like in the wild? Top-scoring candidates show it by doing 3 things: questioning assumptions, considering different perspectives, and justifying their decisions with rock-solid evidence. You aren't just blindly agreeing with the prompt. You're analyzing it, poking holes in it, looking at the counter-arguments, and utilizing your advanced Afrikaans vocabulary to weigh all the evidence before you land on a firm, justified conclusion.
If you're hit with a comparative analysis question, you have to be rigorous. Identify the similarities and the differences. Then, specifically use complex comparative connectives to weave your evidence together. Support every single comparison with evidence, and then draw a conclusion about their relative importance. This is honestly where your complex vocabulary pays off the most. Using Afrikaans transition words effectively here is a total game changer.
Reflect on your last practice essay for a second. Were you just summarizing the information provided, or were you actively questioning assumptions and justifying your decisions? Summarizing just shows you can read. Questioning and justifying show deep, critical analysis. Making this fundamental shift in your mindset is the absolute key to unlocking those top mark bands.
Finally, Section 5, Examiner Warnings. Let's make sure we avoid the danger zone.
I want you to treat this slide like your ultimate survival guide, straight from the principal examiner reports. Here are the top 3 warnings. Number 1, answers are way too vague. Examiners are practically begging for specific details. Number 2, students just totally forget to check their formatting and presentation conventions. And number 3, which is the big one we touched on earlier, answers are not specific to the context given. If you actively avoid these 3 traps, you're already putting yourself way ahead of the curve.
Seriously, if you literally only remember one thing from this entire explainer today, make it this. Always link every single point back to the given scenario. It does not matter how flawless or sophisticated your Afrikaans grammar is, if your argument is just floating around in a generic void instead of being anchored directly to the specific prompt, you are going to lose points. Period. Let's bring it all together. Your key takeaways for an A-star essay makeover. First, master those 3 cognitive domains: knowledge, analysis, and evaluation. Second, strictly follow the 5-step procedural framework so your essay actually has a logical backbone. And third, aggressively contextualize every single argument you make to avoid serving up a generic answer.
I'm going to leave you with a question to chew on before your next practice run. When you pick up that pen, are you just writing a standard essay, or are you executing a justified analytical argument? Shift your perspective, apply these frameworks alongside your complex sentence patterns, and watch your grades completely transform. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and good luck with your exam prep.